English 122, Day 16, Counterarguments. From Writing Arguments, Chapter 7, pages 124 to 139. Arguments can be classified into three categories based on their treatment of alternative views. Arguments are considered either one-sided, multi-sided, or dialogic. Let's consider these differences. One-sided arguments present only the writer's position on an issue without summarizing and responding to alternative views. Multi-sided arguments, on the other hand, present the writer's position but also summarize and respond to possible objections and alternative views. Finally, dialogic arguments are arguments in which the writer presents him or herself as uncertain or searching, and the audience is considered a partner in the dialogue, and the writer's purpose is to seek common ground, perhaps leading to a consensual solution to a particular problem. Always consider the appropriate context for each type of argument. One-sided arguments often occur when an issue is not highly contested. Multi-sided arguments show that the writer has considered alternative views and thus reduce some initial hostility with neutral or undecided audiences. Finally, dialogic approaches have the best chance of establishing common ground with highly resistant audiences. Therefore, writers must identify the audience's level of resistance and the causes for that resistance. People who agree with the position on the issue already are considered in accord with the writer. Resistance, on the other hand, is used to refer to people who disagree with the position because their values, beliefs, or assumptions are different from yours. Oftentimes, resistant views will fall into different categories rather than along a simple line from accord to resistance. Writers must learn to address different audience members' needs one at a time. For these reasons, it is very important to develop a stable vision of the audience before you determine the content, structure, and tone of your argument. Let's review. Looking back at one-sided arguments, these type of arguments commonly occur when an issue isn't highly contested and when the writer's aim is merely to put forth a new or different point of view. These types of arguments either ignore opposing views or reduce them to enemy stereotypes and have the goal of solidifying support, increasing fervor, and inspiring action. Classical or multi-sided arguments appeal to a neutral or undecided audience. They must summarize opposing views fairly and follow the principle of charity, which means avoiding loaded, biased summaries that oversimplify or distort opposing arguments simply to make them easier to rebut. Instead, multi-sided arguments respond to opposing views openly and fairly. They try to refute opposing views either by convincing readers that the counterargument is logically flawed, inadequately supported, or based on erroneous assumptions, or by conceding to the strengths of alternative views and then shifting to a different field of values. Finally, dialogic audiences occur when audiences are highly resistant to the argument because they hold different values, beliefs, or assumptions from the writers. In this case, the writer's goal should simply be to open the dialogue by seeking common ground, by finding places where the writer and audience agree. These types of arguments aim not to convince or convert readers to the writer's position, but rather to reduce their resistance or skepticism by increasing their willingness to listen to the writer's perspective. Let's look at how you can use the classical enthymeme structure to refute counterarguments. When refuting an opposing view, you have the option to refute either the writer's explicitly stated claim, reasons, and grounds, or evidence in this case, or the writer's unstated warrant and backing, which are the underlying assumptions that the argument is based on. So you can respond to the explicit or implicit parts of the argument. However, you will almost always need to question a writer's use of evidence, their grounds, or backing. You can deny the truth of the data, cite counterexamples in testimony, cast doubt on the representativeness or sufficiency of examples, cast doubt on the relevance or currency of the examples, call into question the credibility of an authority, question the accuracy or context of quotes, or question the way statistics were produced or interpreted. However, in some cases, you will encounter counterarguments that you simply cannot refute. In these cases, you'll want to shift to a different field of values that is more favorable to your position. Don't try to refute the writer's grounds, reasons, or warrant, but introduce a new warrant that you think you and your audience share. So by conceding to this opposing argument, you may actually strengthen your argument by increasing your credibility and gaining the audience's goodwill. In addition to the classic enthymeme structure, there are a couple of other strategies that you can use to respond to counterarguments. The first of these is the delayed thesis strategy. In this strategy, the writer waits until the end of the argument to reveal the thesis. Sometimes telling your readers where you stand at the beginning of your argument, which is a very classical strategy, can actually separate you definitively from alternative views. A delayed thesis strategy lends a greater sense of complexity and surprise to the argument and increases reader sympathy for more than one view. It also heightens interest in the tension among alternative views. In addition to the delayed thesis strategy, you might also consider trying a Rogerian strategy. This emphasizes empathetic listening, which is the ability to see an issue sympathetically from another person's perspective. The Rogerian strategy stresses psychological as well as logical dimensions of an argument and reduces the sense of threat by pointing to areas of agreement. The Rogerian strategy demonstrates an understanding of the audience's position before presenting the writer's own position. Responding to counterarguments in these ways will make your argumentative texts more successful.